Two teams reach the century mark, and two others continue their push towards wildcard spots. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Friday, March 21st, 2025. Vic and Neil with you, and I got to tell you something. I didn't watch a minute of the NCAA college basketball March Madness because we got plenty of that Thursday night around the NHL.
Well, even if the NHL had been dormant last night, I wouldn't have watched 1 minute of March Madness basketball. So there we go.
All right.
I'm total hockey all the time.
And that's what we're going to be right here. So I'm going to start off with a couple of headliners. The last two teams in the NHL alphabet, Washington and Winnipeg, reach 100 points on the season. Capitals first by virtue of a 3-2 win over the Philadelphia Flyers. Alex Ovechkin, goal number 888. And the Winnipeg Jets with a 4-3 win in overtime against the Edmonton Oilers on Kyle Connor's 37th goal of the season. But the bigger news in that game, Connor McDavid suffering a lower body injury in the second period when he got tangled up with Josh Morrissey. Leon Draisaitl was already out with an undisclosed injury, and Stu Skinner left that game in the final 5 minutes of regulation, and Calvin Pickard had to finish up.
Yeah, so a lot of things. It's funny, Connor McDavid, it didn't look like a lower body injury, though. It looked like a wrist or hand injury when he was on the bench. Then he was talking to the trainer. I don't know how they came out of that with lower body injury. Unless he tweaked his groin or something like that, and you know, nobody noticed that, and how you wouldn't see that anyway. But this whole lower body, upper body thing is just, it makes you nuts, right? Pat Quinn started it. Pat Quinn started this when with the Toronto Maple Leafs, when they would say to him, "What's the injury?" And he said, "Well, it was a lower body injury," and everybody groaned. But then it became standard lingo that's how we'll do it. You either got a lower body or upper body injury. Like, if you admit where the injury is, everybody's going to attack that injury then when he gets on the ice.
We've said on this show before that if you want to hide it, if you want to go upper body, lower body, it's one thing. But when the injury is so obvious, you know, if a guy slices an Achilles, I think we know what it is. If he breaks his leg, we know what it is. If he takes a puck in the face, we know what it is.
I think shoulder injuries are the most obvious of all of them. When you see a guy go off with his shoulder, he's holding it because and they'll come back with an upper body injury. Well, he obviously, Adam Fox, when he went down at UBS Arena, sublexed his shoulder. There was one other player for Florida the other night,
Dmitry Kulikov.
Yep. On another, he got a penalty and had to go out of the game injured. You know, it's obvious what it is, but I guess maybe to us it's obvious because we've watched this so many times. To the normal fan, by the way, before you get to it, and I know you're going to get to the Islander game. Last night there was a breakaway goal that got called back in the Islander game. Suzuki took a pass right at the Islander blue line in the second period and went in and scored. And I said immediately to the people beside me, I said, that's going to get looked at for offside. I think that was offside. Like I said it while they were still in there cheering, huddled, the Canadians were. And sure enough, they got reviewed and it got called back offside. And my point is you see so many games, you see so many things that instinctively you know that his feet weren't in the right place for him to have been onside. His feet were in the wrong place, and they're going to have to look at that. And, you know, maybe it will be onside, but boy, it looked from the placement of his feet or the way he brought the puck over the blue line or something that was offside to you. But to the 11,000 poor souls at the game, they really didn't see it that way because they don't notice it. All they know is that he scored a goal.
I think if you watch long enough, there is just something that you're able to pick up that either looks right or doesn't look right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the point you're making.
Yeah,
right?
But I think that's in life in general. Like, there's a lot of things in day-to-day life where you just go like, that's not normal what just happened there. And it doesn't have to be something crazy. I can't come up with an example right now, but there's just something in normal life. Your eyes aren't used to seeing that all the time. And sure enough, you're usually right. I mean, a plane goes over way too low and you're like, am I near an airport? Like I've lived here for 20 years. I didn't know there was an airport near here.
On that particular play, before we dive into the games, when I'm watching on TV last night, he looked too far into the zone for that to be onside. But the bottom line was, it was literally a quarter inch that his heel preceded the puck into the zone.
Yeah. But that's how much you've watched that you can say to yourself, something's off about that one.
We're going to circle back to that game in a moment. Usually we do start in the East, but we got to start in the West. And is Doug Armstrong in offer sheet heaven right now?
Yeah, no, those guys are working out well for him, and he made a bold move, and it's working out well for the future of his team, too. That's the big deal. I mean, yes, last night these guys did great things, but I mean, he did it as a move for the future. And these guys are working out to be a big part of the St. Louis Blues.
It's working out right now, and we've got 3 very interesting games to recap from the West bubble. So we're going to start with Vancouver and St. Louis. And the Blues were down 2-1, third period. Tyler Tucker, Dylan Holloway scored 24 seconds apart to put the Blues ahead. And with the goalie pulled, 10 seconds left, the puck is at center ice. Quinn Hughes does a remarkable job to gain the St. Louis blue line, gets the puck to Elias Pettersson, who then goes cross ice to a wide open Brock Besser on the right wing, blasts one home. He's got consecutive 2-goal games. That forces the game to overtime with 4 seconds left in regulation. But in the OT, Pettersson turns the puck over, and Broberg from Holloway and Shen and the St. Louis Blues are now the second wild card team in the Western Conference. How about that?
No, that's something. I mean, a lot of people had St. Louis dead and buried quite a while ago, and they've had a remarkable run here to get themselves to the position they're in now. Don't make a mistake about it. They've only got 12 games to go. 7 of the 12 are at home, 5 on the road. But the Vancouver Canucks have 13. Minnesota, who they're not going to catch anyways, has 13. The team that's got 2 games in hand on them is the Calgary Flames. And if Calgary keeps playing the way you're going to talk about them playing, they could get in there too.
They could. And I want to make one final point before we get to the Calgary-Jersey game, that as great a win as this was for St. Louis, they allowed the Canucks to get a point. So instead of being up 2 points and having the regulation win tiebreaker, they're only up 1 point, even in regulation wins, and the Canucks have a game in hand. So this is a terrific win. There's a lot of drama surrounding it, but when you peel the onion back a little bit, there was a lost opportunity there amidst that victory.
You know what? It is what it is. There's nothing anybody can do about it. It's worth mentioning that. But, as they say, if my aunt was named Bob, she'd be my uncle.
Well, we're going to bring Uncle Bob back to this if the Blues wind up missing out by 1 point. And you just mentioned the Calgary Flames. Ryan Huska, the head coach, is not going to win the Jack Adams Trophy. But boy, he's got to be getting some votes because of the job he's done with the Flames this year, This was a club thought to be in a complete rebuild, and they are just 2 points behind St. Louis, 2 games in hand, by virtue of a 5-3 win over the Devils Thursday, overcoming a 3-1 third period deficit to score 4 times in the third. Jonathan Huberdeau, his 26th goal of the season, was the game winner with 3:20 left, plus an assist. And Jacob Markstrom, 0-2 against the Flames this season. But for a team that is offensively challenged to have that kind of explosion on the road, what a win.
They're having a good road trip, aren't they? Except for the game they played in Toronto, which might have been a wake-up call because they got obliterated, but then they flew in late, got into Madison Square Garden and beat the Rangers and have gone on and continued to play well. Their next opponent, of course, will be tomorrow at 4:00 against the Islanders.
Game you'll be attending.
Exactly. And then after that, Calgary heads home. So we'll see. Here's the thing to look at for tomorrow. There's a theory that the last game of a road trip, particularly a team that's been on an extensive road trip, as the teams in the West do encounter, that last game is usually not a great game because everybody's waiting to get back on the plane and get home finally. So we'll see.
Anything with that being a 4:00 local start for Calgary that maybe it's different than a road game played 3 hours later?
I don't think so. As Patrick Waugh said about the players, they're all used to this. Like, they didn't grow up the way we did with all night games. So these 4:00 and 12:30s and 1:00 and that don't bother them the way it bothers us. Like, I hate them. I can't stand going to a game in the afternoon. It just drives me nuts. I want to see my games at night. I want to come out and it's dark outside and the night is done. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it's going to start at 4:00 whether I like it or not.
Carl will be waiting for you at 12:30.
1:00.
All right. Fair enough. The Utah Hockey Club still hanging around, 73 points, 4 points behind St. Louis. They've got a game in hand on the Blues. And they beat the Buffalo Sabres 5-2. Dylan Guenther with the game-winning goal with 5:47 left. But if you have the opportunity to go back and watch the last 2 minutes of this game, it pretty much puts in a package the last 14 years for the Buffalo Sabres. So they pull their goalie for a 6th attacker while they're in the Utah zone, the high sticking penalty. But Buffalo still has possession. So they're about to get a 6-on-4 with an opportunity to tie the game. Tage Thompson has the puck along the left wing boards, goes back to the point, misses everybody, hits the boards, and goes into the net for an own goal that is credited to Kevin Stenlund. But wait, there's more. Because Buffalo pulls the goalie again. They have the power play. Mikhail Sergachev shoots the puck from around his own goal line. Rasmus Dahlin tries to glove it down. It hits his glove and goes into the empty net for a second ENG. For the Buffalo Sabres, only 60 points on the year, and they're like the Charlie Brown of the NHL.
No, they are. I mean, it's sad, and I feel for Lindy Ruff. You know, imagine if you're standing behind the bench and you're watching like this Bad News Bears routine go on. It's too bad. The ownership's going to have to do something, or this is going to continue on because they don't have that bad of a team. They got some really good players on the Buffalo Sabres.
What about the morale piece? And of course, there was Dahlin denying that he wanted out of Buffalo. And it's got to be so disheartening for this club because, as we said, they have good players. Thompson and Tuck and Power and Dahlin. And, you can go up and down the line. It's not the worst lineup in the NHL. but to have only 60 points and be 7 below NHL 500 coming into the final 15% of the season, it's not acceptable.
No, it's not. And you can see that when the games are in Buffalo and the camera goes over the stands and the attendance is poor. Look, it's their money, right? It's the Pegula's money. If they want to handle it this way and just continue to tread water and be frustrating for their fans and have their season tickets dwindle and have their advertising dollars dwindle and have their corporate sponsorships dwindle, that's up to them.
This isn't even treading water at this point. So
no, this is drowning.
We'll leave it. Yeah, it is.
Head is submerged underwater. Bubbles coming up.
Nice segue. Because speaking of bubble, we will go to the East bubble and we will go back to that Islanders-Canadiens game that we had spoken of earlier. Bo Horvat, 2 goals, including the overtime winner. Patrick Laine and Brendan Gallagher scored goals in the third period to bring the Habs even. But once again, Ilya Sorokin, 38 saves. The Canadiens really outplayed the Islanders significantly in this game for large stretches. I thought the Islanders had a lot of trouble with the Canadiens' speed, but goaltending is the one great X factor in the NHL.
And the guy at the other end, Montembeault, he is not a bad goaltender, but he's not Ilya Sorokin. And the first goal that went in literally just leaked through him. It was a tip by Duclair. And he thought he had it, and everybody else could see it dribble through and into the back of the net. That made it 1-0. And I think that was like the Islanders' second shot on net or third shot on net. They were being badly outshot. And, they were badly outplayed. They were in a lot of the game. But then just like against the Penguins and just like against the Panthers, which were the previous 2 teams that they beat, they came on late and were able to get the 2 points. So 6 points they have gotten in games that if you were at, you would have sworn they were going to get no points, and they ended up with 6. And that's a big deal when you're in this race. That's why they're in it still.
The cutoff is only 89.2 heading into the weekend. The upshot is that entering play Tuesday, the Islanders needed to jump 5 teams to get into the second wild card. Friday, they need to jump just 1, and that's Montreal, who they trail by only 2 points. They had the regulation win tiebreaker, and they're even in games played with 14 to go. And the significance also of the Islanders winning versus Montreal is it would be a 4-point lead for the Canadiens as opposed to just a 2-point lead. So a lot of consequence coming out of games in both bubbles last night.
Well, Montreal got a loser point. You talked about on the other side that the Vancouver Canucks got a loser point. And those are big. They're big. And that's why it's so hard to jump over teams, because every night there are 3 points out there for every game that are available. Someone said before the game started last night, this is a 4-point game, Montreal and Islanders. They're right, but it ended up being a 1-point game.
That's right.
Because the swing was only 1 point.
Correct. Let's talk about the Atlantic Division now. Pretty good week for the Maple Leafs. 3 wins in 4 nights. On Wednesday, they get a 2-1 win against the Colorado Avalanche. And the game-winning goal, it's a shorthanded marker by Steven Lorentz in the third, when Simon Benoit went to clear the puck all the way down ice. Kelly Sutherland, the referee, toe picks, falls down, the puck hits him, and just dies in the neutral zone, where Lorentz picks it up and scores the game-winning goal. Joseph Woll with 38 saves, and according to a lot of people in Canada, he is establishing himself as the number 1 goaltender over Anthony Stolarz, who did win in Madison Square Garden on Thursday. With a 4-3 win over the Rangers, John Tavares with 2 goals and an assist. Jake McCabe, 3 assists. William Nylander, 2 assists and a +4. Artemi Panarin scored his 31st plus an assist, but the Rangers on a 3-game losing streak. So coming off of that lemon against Calgary, they did play better. But once again, you don't get a trophy for participation. And for the Leafs, they sit atop or tied with the Florida Panthers with 87 points with identical 42, 24, and 3 records.
Yeah, and that's going to be a fight down to the finish. And you know what? If I'm the Leafs or I'm the Panthers, I want to finish first. I would rather play Ottawa than have to play Tampa in the first round.
The Panthers got a 1-0 overtime win in Columbus. Alexander Barkov with the winner after Kirill Marchenko shot the puck over the glass with 30 seconds left in regulation. Elvis Merzlikins made a huge save in the final seconds just to force the overtime. But Sergei Bobrovsky, 25-save shutout, that's his 49th of his career. So Florida and Toronto, 1-2 in the Atlantic. Right behind them with 85 points and 1 fewer game played, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who get a 3-2 shootout win over Dallas. Hagel and Cirelli, goal and an assist. Gabe Gonsalves with the shootout winner against Casey DeSmith that ended an 8-game home winning streak for Dallas. So this is probably the best divisional race that we are going to see coming down the stretch. Other games in the Central Division now. And we talked at the top of the show, Winnipeg beating Edmonton 4-3. We mentioned the McDavid injury, Draisaitl out, Stu Skinner leaving the game. Jeff Skinner coming out of his season-long coma with 2 goals. Zach Hyman had his 25th, clearly the best player on the ice in the third period with the 2 superstars out. Morrissey, goal and an assist, and assisted on Kyle Connor's overtime winner. Colorado puts a beating on Ottawa, 5-1. Senators have now lost 2 straight. Linus Ullmark gets knocked out of the game after giving up 4 goals in the first 17-29. Brock Nelson gets his first 2 goals with the Avalanche. Nathan McKinnon gets his 28th. What about Cale Makar? Up to 26 goals this season.
Yeah, he's remarkable. But I want to say Ullmark left the game with over a 13 goals against average for that game because of the 4 goals going in that short order of time. That must have been gruesome to sit through if you're a Senators fan and you're at the Canadian Tire Center.
I think you use games like these as a measuring stick, and the Sens had a 6-game winning streak prior to dropping their last 2. They still have hold on wild card 1 in the Eastern Conference, still up by 3 points over the Canadiens and 5 points over the Islanders and the Rangers. When you look at them stepping up in class and them going down 4-0 in the first period, I think it gets people nervous that they're going to start slipping backwards again, even though they have such a favorable schedule heading down the stretch.
You wonder, but they are playing a terrific team in Colorado, and Colorado, by the way, now goes and takes that show into the Bell Center tomorrow, and Montreal, who is also craving points, we'll see if can Colorado do it again, or are they done for that area because they fly home right after the game and then a couple nights later face the Red Wings. Let's look at this. For the Colorado Avalanche, they can still end up in second place in the Central and get home ice. It looks like they've got a date with the Stars, right? And that's a big deal. So, you know what? They've got stuff to play for. And I still think, too, that the Colorado Avalanche is trying to figure their team out. I think with all the changes they made, that they're still trying to see, okay, how is this machine going to work? And they might have found a little bit more of it last night, putting that beat down on Ottawa.
There's 9 new players in their lineup since the start of the season. And even though they have a shot for second in the Central, which, as you said, would get them home ice, they're still 3 points behind Dallas, and Dallas has played 2 fewer games than them. And you just mentioned Montreal, and the Canadiens, I think, are going to get the same kind of test on Saturday that the Senators failed badly last night.
It's always exciting for the Western teams to play in Montreal. They only get one shot to do that a year.
Yeah.
So I would think that usually the teams from the West are really up to play against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, as well as, of course, against New York Rangers in New York and things like that. But, I mean, for Canadian kids, those 2 games are really special, going in against the Canadiens and playing against the Leafs.
One other game that I want to hit on in the Central, that one was played on Wednesday, with Minnesota shutting out Seattle 4-0. Ryan Hartman, Matt Boldy, and Liam Ogren scoring within the first 4:29 of the game. Boldy added a second goal. Philip Gustafson, 34-save shutout for his 5th of the season. And if the Wild didn't have enough injury issues with Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek, and you can name a bunch of other players, Marco Rossi left this game with a lower body injury hit by a Boldy shot.
And that was, I'll describe the lower body injury. It was the inside of the left knee where he took that shot from Boldy. So they can call it a lower body injury. I know exactly where it was. You don't have a lot of padding, and it's right on the side, right at the joint of your knee there. So that caught him there. So I'm sure it's a bone bruise, and he's going to have to get it worked on by the staff until he's at a place where he can put all the weight back on it.
A couple of other games of the Pacific. The Vegas Golden Knights beat the Boston Bruins 5-1. Pavel Dorofeev, his second hat trick, he reaches 30 goals for the Golden Knights. And more good news in Vegas, William Karlsson returned after a 20-game absence and had an assist. Meanwhile, the Bruins' death spiral continues. Hanging around in the Pacific, have a shot to overtake Edmonton for home ice in that first round, only 2 points back with 2 games in hand. They get a 3-1 win in Chicago. Trevor Moore, Alex Turcotte scoring the first. But I think bigger piece of news here. Connor Bedard scored his 19th. Hawks lose their 5th straight. They're the second team after San Jose to be officially eliminated. But now there's word that Connor Bedard's agent is being discouraged from having his clients sign an extension, which he would be eligible to do starting this summer.
You know, we saw what happened with Seth Jones earlier in the season. He asked out of Chicago. He didn't see it going in the right direction. I don't know how Bedard's representatives and parents and so on could see it going in the right direction either. Now, it's only been 2 years for Bedard. I mean, it's not like it's a lifetime.
And it speaks to something larger also, that when he came out of juniors, he was this generational player, which I don't think we're ever going to see that. And I know 2 years is maybe a very short sample size in what may be a 15 or 18 or 20-year career. But can you imagine if the Hawks wind up turning around and trading him after all of the hype for him to come into the NHL?
No, I can't imagine it. But, I mean, we just saw it with Jack Eichel in Buffalo. There was a lot of hype when Jack Eichel came into the league, that's for sure. And, you know, they didn't refer to Jack Eichel as a generational talent like they did with Bedard,
Or Connor McDavid, who was chosen one slot ahead of him.
But they did talk about Connor McDavid being generational talent, right? I mean, the New York Rangers just traded a second overall pick, right? Capo Caco, that they picked right behind Jack Hughes. And by the way, the Rangers' first overall pick, Alex Lafreniere, is not lighting it on fire this season. When you watch number 13 on the Rangers and somebody says, yeah, he was first overall in the draft, you'd be like, he was? So, getting back to whether they trade him, I don't think that'll happen. But I mean, the agent and the parents and the kid, they have to make a statement if they don't like what's going on in Chicago and they don't think they're going in the right direction. As you just said, he could play 18 years, he could play 20 years, but 2 years out of only 18, it's a lot. I just finished saying, it's only 2 years, but you know what? 2 seasons out of 18 where you're almost dead and buried in 32nd place. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah. 3 other games to put a wrap on our walk around the league. We had spoken earlier about the Capitals beating the Flyers 3-2. We're going to take the Philadelphia side of things here. Flyers lose their 8th in 9 games. Travis Konechny, who most people regard as their best player, no goals in his last 13, 1 in his last 23, 2 in his last 29. And if you ever need examples that a player is thinking too much, he had a 2-on-0 with Matvei Michkov in the third period. And the two of them went back and forth passing the puck and didn't even get a shot on goal. And then in the final seconds, he had a chance to tie the game from within about 15 feet of the net and elected to pass off as time expired. So that pretty much capsulizes a lot of the frustration going on in Philly right now.
Which is heavy-duty frustration there. And people are writing very negatively about the Flyers at this point in the season. I guess it's because they are watching other teams that are in the rebuild, exceed what's going on in Philadelphia. So we'll stay tuned to that one.
Carolina beat San Jose 3-1. Hurricanes just keep rolling along, their 8th straight win. So despite the fact that they got a little bit of grief on the Mikko Rantanen deal and the return, they haven't lost a game.
No, and they've got back-to-backs coming up with the Kings and the Ducks, which is typical of an Eastern team going out to the California area. They played San Jose. They're lucky because the most formidable opponent of the 3 is the Kings, and they get them after a day of rest. And then they play the Ducks on the back-to-back situation. So Carolina's still just rolling along like they have for the last couple of years. I mean, they're right there. I don't think anybody other than Carolina fans are picking them as a Stanley Cup team, but they're certainly a formidable team. And for all intents and purposes, if you want to look into a crystal ball, the New Jersey Devils being without Jack Hughes and without Dougie Hamilton, it's going to size up very well for Carolina Hurricanes with home ice playing them in the first round.
They're going to finish second in the Metro. They're 12 points behind the Capitals, who they're not going to catch. And they're 8 points ahead of the Devils with 2 games in hand. So looks like Rod Brind'Amour certainly has a chance to mold this team exactly the way he wants to, with not a lot of pressure of either trying to catch Washington or hold off Jersey.
And this is exactly where Toronto was last season. If you remember, they were cemented into the second spot in their division to the point where the games didn't even matter. I remember at one point, Toronto late in the season even rested guys early, because they weren't going anywhere. They weren't moving up and they weren't moving down. Another issue to be thought about with this playoff format. They should try to get it as close as possible to that every game is important, not that near the end of the season you can be cemented into position and you're not going anywhere. Because why would Carolina take a chance with, say, Sebastian Aho or Seth Jarvis, later on in the schedule, and yet their last 2 games are against at Montreal and at Ottawa. They could actually be handing a playoff spot to one of those 2 teams if they go in there and say, we don't care because we're cemented into second.
Well, I had the playoff format slotted for a couple minutes downwind in the show, but why don't we talk about this now? Because Gary Bettman has said that the current format isn't going anywhere. And to your point, you're going to have teams locked into these 2-3 positions. And with that, you're not going to get those teams playing competitive games down the stretch. Whereas if you're going 1 through 8, you probably have jockeying between the 3 and 6 positions.
Yes, most definitely. But I would guess, and it's a guess, not insider information, that the league is so in bed with television that they want to have more certainty of who's going to play who than you would have if it was 1 versus 8, because they want to prepare for the playoffs, and you can much more easily prepare when it's like this than the old format of 1 versus 8.
I don't know about that, but
well, that's why they went to. Wait a minute, and I know you know infinitely more about TV than I do, but that's why they went to the bracketed system, so the TV knew who's possible that they were going to play, instead of going to the real system that should be competitiveness, which is the strongest gets the weakest in every round.
Do you think it's healthy that we could potentially see the Kings and Oilers playing in the opening round for 4 consecutive years? I mean, this almost feels like the old Adams division in the mid-'80s, right?
It's not healthy. It's not healthy. I remember when David Poile made a plea at the GM or governor's meetings to change the way, because they had to play Pittsburgh every year. And it was just getting old. So, and that was when David, by the way, was with Washington.
Right.
And they were playing Pittsburgh every year. For the Kings, I'm sure they would like to play somebody other than the Oilers. I'm sure that LA fans would like to see a different team. They would love to see the Vegas Golden Knights, for example. They would love to see an American team. Not that there's anything against Canadian team, but I agree with you totally. I just think it's better for the game if it was 1 versus 8, which is truly a fair system, rather than what I think is an unfair system. Because in the first round this year, if the standings stop today,
yep,
either Colorado or Dallas, their season is going to end after the first round. Now, think about that. They're 2 Stanley Cup contenders. There isn't anybody that could tell me that Colorado and Dallas are not Stanley Cup contenders. And yet one of them will be gone after the first round.
That's
right. The way the standings are today.
And you're going to have Florida or Toronto or Tampa that are going out also.
Right.
One of those 3 absolutely will have to go out. So I'll tell you what I loved. And, of course, this has about enough chance of happening again as me becoming the next pope, is 1980 and 1981, when we had the 1 through 16.
Mm-hmm.
And you would sit there and just shuffle teams around the last night of the season. I mean, it was a traveling secretary's nightmare. But boy, was that ever exciting and interesting and intriguing, and just watching where your club might end up.
Isn't that when the Rangers got the LA Kings in the first round?
Yes.
I think it's great. It's the way it should be.
Yeah.
That you play all season, you play your heart out all season, and first overall, whether it be the Washington Capitals or the Winnipeg Jets, they should be getting the worst of these wild card teams, which right now would be Montreal Canadiens. So let's say Winnipeg wins a President's Trophy and the standings stood still as they are today. They would be awarded by playing Montreal, which is the way it should be.
Absolutely. And I remember that last night of the 80-81 season, that the Rangers actually had 5 different opponents as final scores started to come in through the course of the day and the evening. And I thought, man, this is just the greatest.
It is, but you know what? TV is more important than the fans.
It is now. So with that, let's go to a couple of player and league notes. Josh Manson, who we had spoken about traveling with the Avalanche on this road trip. He was hurt last Friday in Calgary, and he was supposed to be working out with the team, but now he is reportedly going to be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Upper body injury. And Dmitry Kulikov, who we mentioned earlier, according to Paul Maurice, now out week to week, suffered an upper body injury in a collision with Anthony
Shoulder.
Okay. Evander Kane, Oilers forward, has resumed skating. He's had an abdominal injury, but he remains on long-term IR. And you want some more teams in the NHL, Leo?
No.
Well, NHL has met with Houston billionaire Dan Friedkin to discuss its interest in bringing an expansion team to the Texas City. Friedkin has a net worth of $6.4 billion, according to Forbes, and recently bought a 99% interest in the English Premier League club, Everton. Silence?
Yeah, let's get on to the Bubble Lock Challenge. I don't want any more teams in the league. 32 is a nightmare, and 33 would be even more of an extended nightmare. I'm all for having Houston in the league, just not Houston as number 33. Houston is one of the 32.
Technically, Houston would be number 34 since the Coyotes remain a dormant franchise.
Yeah. Well, they might. They're doormat. You should take the N out of there. Doormat instead of dormant. They're gone.
Duly noted, because neither Houston or Arizona will be part of the Bubble Luck Challenge. And you're starting to feel a little heat with me coming up from behind, because you had Montreal winning at the Island. You do get a point, so your record now falls, put that in parentheses or quotes, to 9-2-1, so you still have 19 points. But me, with my stirring victory with St. Louis over Vancouver, I'm now elevated to 5-4-3. So I have 13 points, but still 6 points to make up.
You're only 2 wins away from truly 500.
Yeah. Yeah. Knock the wind out of my sails, why don't you? All right, what do you got for this weekend?
I'll take Ottawa over New Jersey. Because that way I know that it's not my heart guiding it, it's my head. So I'm saying Ottawa over New Jersey. Because if I take Rangers in Vancouver, I got that thing mixed in. If I take Islanders in Calgary, it's hard for me because I know who I want to have win those games. Ottawa, New Jersey, I don't really want either. I don't, that's just a judgment. So
the New York Rangers have had Canadian clubs passing through the Garden over the past week. They've dropped games to the Oilers, the Flames, and now the Maple Leafs. And they have the Canucks coming in Saturday afternoon. They're going to honor Sam Rosen before the game. I can't think that they're going to continue to stink out the ranch the way that they have. So I'm going with the Rangers for one final time. If they don't deliver here, I'm not picking them for the rest of the year.
Okay. You heard it, folks. He's put that out there.
We have a very entertaining guest coming up on NHL Wraparound on Monday. Why don't you tease it for the fans out there?
Yeah, Jack Michaels, who is the Edmonton play-by-play announcer on TV, who does all the televised games with Louis DeBrusque as his color man. will be on the show on Monday and give us all the insights into this star-studded team. And I gotta say that Edmonton is one of the most intriguing teams of this era. You know, that it's the star-studded, the Draisaitl McDavid show and even Bouchard and Nurse. And I mean, they've got a very interesting team, Zach Hyman. So it's going to be fun to talk to Jack. And Jack's journey to Edmonton as the play-by-play man is very interesting as well.
With the injury to McDavid, the injury to Stu Skinner, the soup has gotten a little bit thicker in Edmonton, and Jack will be with us to break it all down on Wraparound on Monday. So we look forward to speaking with you then. Have a great weekend, all.